So, healthcare law and policy, that's the topic I picked. I know it's a bit of a broad topic, but it held a lot of I learned a lot more about it in this class. Obviously, it's a healthcare law and policy class, but specifically about the evolution of healthcare law and policy. I was really impacted by the chapters that highlighted major healthcare law changes or reform, especially like between the 60s and the 80s. Like Roe versus Wade. A lot of the landscape of healthcare greatly changed, especially with the IOM's report on healthcare errors and how that drove a lot of healthcare law policy and change. And from a perspective of somebody that's been impacted in both good and bad ways with healthcare, I have certain pre-existing conditions that excluded me from receiving insurance as a young adult. I always felt a little, I felt like that was a bit unfair. These weren't things I chose to have. They weren't things I had a whole lot of control over, and I had certainly put in great deal of effort and time and money to address them. To be told I can't have insurance because it's of something I have no control over felt really prohibitive. I was very upset by it. So, things like the ACA that have regulated insurance companies to a great deal and have made that basically illegal is something I can greatly appreciate. I do think that one thing that has changed in my understanding is that although I always knew there was a lot to healthcare law and policy, the actual complexity and the drivers of it have not always been something I've understood really well. And I see now that with my greater understanding of where it's been and how it's changed along the way into where we've gotten to, understanding the reasons why it's changed, is of great value in being able to make an impact in this area if I choose to pursue working in healthcare law and policy, especially. Um, One of the largest impacts I think that I've had in under not just in it's a combination of what I've learned in this class and my own personal experiences have been, I've always worked in the healthcare industry. And so I have all this professional experience with it, but I think that it's just one half. I think you need to have the personal experience. I think those two combined together serve to achieve the best in policy making when it comes to healthcare, especially when you're implementing laws that affect not just a small group of people, but the nation as a whole. I know that when my husband and I moved from California to South Carolina this July, we changed from his insurance through his company in California to insurance through his new company, and we actually have to pay for a portion of it, whereas before we didn't. And having more responsibility, more financial responsibility with regard to my health care is something I've come to appreciate more, especially in knowing that a lot of that has been because of the ACA and the 2015 annual healthcare reform update. I think the Bible calls us to be exceedingly accountable for ourselves, and Jesus Christ is the ultimate example of accountability. And even if the ACA is not driven by Christian policymakers or biblical perspectives, I think it does parallel a lot of those types of important ways of living. Um, Being conscientious with your resources. I have health insurance, but am I using it correctly? Am I overutilizing it? Am I not utilizing it enough? And finding that balance. I think the Bible talks a lot about balance in life. Doing enough of one thing but not too much, and vice versa. And I think healthcare is reform, the ACA especially, is seeking to balance out those, especially through policy and law, those who utilize insurance a lot because they have chronic conditions versus those who are young and healthy and only go to the doctor once a year, or maybe for the occasional, illness. I see how it seeks to really, you have this one policy here, and then you have this one policy here, and they may seem contradictory, but they seek to create a balance by working off the other. So, in regard to the healthcare reform update and its impact on me, as again, having been a professional and worked with patients, prior to the ACA's implementation and then after the fact, and then having my own personal experiences with it and having, to make that decision. Do I spend the $40 copay or do I wait until Monday and spend the $25 copay? And just considering the fact that when I make a decision, I think it's very much like when you say yes to one thing, you say no to something else. In healthcare, if I choose to go in for that visit and I don't really need to go in, that I might be taking that spot from somebody that genuinely needs to be seen. And it's hard to know where to draw the line, because obviously when you're sick and uncomfortable, you want to go to the doctor, you want the prescription, you want the advice, you want to be told what to do to feel better. But we've swung too far in that direction. And so the ACA really seeks to kind of hopefully redress that balance. And so I appreciate it from both a professional perspective as well as a personal. And again, the greater regard I have for policy based on my knowledge and my new knowledge of its evolution has been extremely impactful in how I approach my own healthcare and what kind of opinions I make or revise as far as what's going on in our healthcare system today and what I think of the changes that are occurring because of it. So thank you.